And welcome back to another episode of Bokeh and Mocha. My name's Christopher. I'm here with Griff, and we still have Jen under the weather right now, so she won't be with us this episode. Hopefully soon we'll have her back. I'm really looking forward to having her back on there. But for Bokeh and Mocha, we're here to kind of share our experiences from 15 years of professional experience to someone who's been doing a decade of non-commercial, almost a decade of non-commercial.
Yeah, getting on the generous side of decade, yeah.
Yeah,
we'll go
and
with that.
then jumping into the commercial side of things now, and of course Jen being our new and upcoming photographer.
Mhm.
But today episode, we're actually really looking forward to working with differences in rules and regulations.
Yep.
So a
'Cause
lot of that kind of can get in our way, right?
there's a lot of CYA stuff that you have to keep in mind of when you're doing photography, and especially for me as a street photographer as well too, that you have to also keep in mind. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Mm.
What are some of the top 5 things we might have to really work with for different rules and regulations?
Well, also as a portrait photographer, there are model release forms that you can check out online as well. If you have like a photography business or that you're thinking about starting a photography business, there are some forums that you can have written up by somebody who knows what they're talking about. Or there is a helpful resource as well too, which you introduced me to, and I don't remember the name of them off the top of my head.
The Professional Photographers of America, or
The
PPA.
PPBA.
Yep, and I'll actually be talking a lot about that as well
Mhm.
on today's episode.
Yeah. So
Not sponsored,
y-
but we will explain how you
it's
can get it.
it's a great resource though. At the same time, I guess the big thing is that, this is coming from somebody who is a more of a street photographer, even though it doesn't make any money. But the big thing is don't trespass, no private property kind of thing. Now, if you're doing, like, say, for example, a street photography thing, you can photograph the outside of buildings because it's all in plain view of the business and of the people on the street. So if you're like capturing like somebody walking by a storefront and you really like the reflection on the mirror or the window, you can definitely grab that. But what you cannot do is go inside of a business and start taking photos because that is considered private property. I did a
Can you
little.
take pictures through a window though?
That's a good question that I've never even attempted. So, what was your experience in running that?
From what I've understood, and this is where we get into a gray area
Yep.
of the law.
Hmm.
If you take a picture from the street through a window, you as a photographer are still on the public side.
Hmm.
Depending on what your subject is on the inside will
Hmm.
determine if it's legal or not.
Right.
In my personal opinion, I don't take shots through the window
Hmm.
unless I have the model's permission and the store owner
Hmm.
or the store manager's permission
Yeah.
to be able to do that, because you could be able to unknowingly disclose something that they don't want to have disclosed.
Hmm.
Like if there's a recipe or something for a restaurant
Hmm.
or a certain decor that they have in there that's very unique to their
Hmm.
store, they don't want that to be broadcast across.
Yeah.
So I tend to stay away from going through windows, but
Or say, for example, if someone's husband is somewhere where they said they weren't, or something
that
like
too.
that.
But I mean, if they're on the street and you take a picture, then they're still going to get caught.
Yeah, it's true. If they're that blatant
Yep.
and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, and for me, like, if I on the subject of minors, obviously, if you're doing a portrait shoot, you need to have permission from the parents or
Mhm.
the legal guardians in order to take their pictures, especially if you're doing like family portraits, things like that. There's also like a question on release. Is this going to get released online, or is it just being given to the family to release on their own kind of
Mhm.
thing? Um,
Yeah, there's quite a bit of people out there. I think you're one of them that don't really want your kid's face to be
yeah.
posted. For me, I'm at the point of going, it's going to happen whether he's at school or
Hmm.
being a street photographer. So I
Yeah.
let his face go out,
Yeah.
but I'm still very cautious over who takes his picture.
Exactly. So, and I do actually post pictures of my kids online, but usually like it's from behind
Uh
kind of
huh.
thing. So, like I've got this really wonderful shot that I took of them It was almost a year to the day after their mother passed away, and all three of them were walking on the bridge of Frontier Park, and they were holding hands. They were kind of, it was just a nice little moment of them like kind of looking out for each other, and I thought it was just too good to pass up. But I posted it online because they're not exposed in any way, shape, or form. The other thing too, especially in street photography, and there are legal rules, and then there are moral codes as
Mm-hmm.
well too. Like legally speaking, in like say for example settings of photojournalism and stuff like that, when you're taking pictures of like war torn countries or protests or something along those lines, or you know even like documenting you know tragic passings or tragic events and whatnot. um, for me, like I don't want to do that. That's a moral
Mm-hmm.
decision on mine. But legally speaking, like if I took a picture of you know a travesty and sold it to National Geographic, you know it's still legal within its rights. That's just not something that
As
I
long
would.
as they,
Yeah,
long as you were legally allowed to be there.
exactly.
You didn't cross police
Yep.
barricades. You stay within the federal
Yep.
and the state law or the country's law. It's not just here in the
Mhm.
United States. It
Yeah,
can be
because other
anywhere.
there are countries that street photography at all is not
It's not
prohibit.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
not okay. So it all depends on where you're at and things like that. We're talking purely from an American standpoint. You know, if somebody's at a protest and you're well within your rights to document that protest, kind of thing. But yeah, basically, it's fairly common sense. Like you know, don't go onto private property without permission. If you are, say, for example, if a street photography session turns into a street portrait session, just make sure that you get permission. So,
So let me ask you, when we talk about private property, does
mhm.
that mean the city park?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Railroad. Can we go on a railroad
Oh,
track?
there we go with the railroads. We were going to be talking about this for a while. So it's within 15 feet of the railroad, if I remember correctly, or is it 6 feet?
25.
25. I'm off on both of those numbers. I have just stayed away from doing railroad photography in general, just because of like Union Pacific and other train you know companies are now starting to like scan the internet with AI to like find people who have taken photos on train tracks
Yep.
and hitting people with hefty fines because the entire run of the track is private property,
Yep.
up to 25 feet
Yep.
for it.
And also goes with abandoned tracks too.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the tracks are not active,
Mm-hmm.
it's still private property of
Mm-hmm.
that rail line. There are some railroads that you can go get written permission
Mm-hmm.
for certain sections of abandoned track,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to go through the process
Yep.
beforehand. And there's I believe if I remember correctly,
Mm-hmm.
Union Pacific stopped doing their abandoned tracks
Mm-hmm.
a few years ago just because of how many people were taking advantage of. They would give it to one photographer, that photographer would go out, and then 20 others would come
Mm-hmm.
up and say, well, since he was there, I would be there. And
Mm-hmm.
UP said, okay, we're just going to not do it.
Yeah.
But that's being on the tracks. Nothing says you can't take pictures down the tracks. So, for instance, I've got a picture of 4014 who is coming around a bend.
Yeah.
I have a 600 millimeter lens. So I'm sitting on a public roadway, zoomed all the way in. So it looks like I'm standing on the track,
Mm-hmm.
but in reality, I'm not.
You're not. Yeah. So yeah, basically, it's more of a physicality of where you're located when it comes to railroad photography, kind of thing.
How about airports?
No, if I remember correctly, no. It's commercial airspace, and again, you would definitely need to have permission in order to do it. And at the same time, they're probably not going to give it to you. Maybe they will, but it also goes the same for abandoned airports as well, too, if I remember correctly, because you never know if somebody's like making an emergency landing. You don't have a tie into that tower that somebody
That's
could be coming
correct.
in for an emergency landing and just run you over, run
Yep.
you and your model over while.
What's really interesting is there is a thing that you can take pictures of airplanes
Mhm.
at airports. A lot of airports now have this photographer's parking lot where
Mhm.
they actually, in their fence, they have a hole just big enough for a lens to fit in,
Mhm.
so you can be able to take pictures of the airplanes coming in and
Yeah.
taking off. That's the extent of what you can be able to do
Yeah.
out on the runway. But being in an airport,
Mhm.
in the building,
Mhm.
you can still take pictures
Yep.
as long as the model is okay with it.
Yep.
So
And
get back to that gray
yeah,
area.
exactly. It's more of along the lines of like for me, like if you're doing candid shots, I would just err on the side of don't show any faces. Somebody walking with an umbrella, I would probably try to like capture it where the umbrella is like obscuring them, and all you're doing is just capturing a subject, but you're not capturing a person in a way, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So
Well, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to go into the next segment, which is going to be how to protect yourself,
mhm,
because we've got a lot of those that we have to work with too as a
absolutely.
photographer. So we'll be right back after this quick break. And we're back here with our continuing episode here on Bokeh and Mocha on pretty much the rules and regulations and how to keep us
Know
safe as
your
a
rights.
photographer. All right.
Know your rights and know your subject's rights.
Yes, yes, and believe it or not, we actually have quite a bit of rights as a photographer of what we can all do, um, because we live in this wonderful country of the United States. We just talked about in the last segment. Sometimes you can't do street photography. We have that right to be going out and having the ability to take images just in the public.
Mhm.
But when we're going out there, we still have to protect ourselves. Some things are, as we talked about, legal versus moral. If we use moral compass as a deeper connection in the legal side, we can save ourselves a lot of the legal trouble.
Mhm.
When we get into a gray area morally, that's when we're probably going to get into the gray area of the legality as well.
Yeah.
Some of the things that we do in the commercial side to protect ourselves is paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. Anytime that I get a new model that comes in or new client for whatever the case may be, there is always 5 documents every single time of a person that comes in that they have to sign. The first one is release of liability. The second one is their release for their model release form. The third is them understanding the understanding form of you're being documented on camera. The fourth one is typically a location form. If it's not here in the studio, if it's at their house, they have to sign that their location is allowed to be photographed
Mhm.
as well. And then the fifth one is an age form, especially if we're going to be working with people who are minors. They have to have the parents fill out a minor release form.
Mhm.
If they are not a minor, then it's a confirmation of that they are not a minor, and that all the other forms that were before are legal because they signed them.
Yeah.
So
And I know this sounds like really scary and whatnot, but we're talking about like, like dance photos. We're
yeah,
talking about senior portraits. We're talking
yes,
about family portraits and stuff like that.
yeah.
So,
The likelihood of something like that coming back to you,
mhm,
it's not very high, but it's still at the same point
mhm,
better to cover everything
mhm.
through there.
Yeah.
For the other thing that you can protect yourself with is having a lawyer,
Mhm,
having a law system set up. We just talked about in the last segment, the professional photographer in America is
mhm,
something that we actually, as my business, are a part of. And we'll have a link in this episode, and we'll also have a QR code coming up on this episode here
mhm,
at this point to be able to show how to get to that and get signed up for it.
mhm,
We are not sponsored by PPA.
mhm.
However, it has been such a big benefit for my company. I want to share it with everybody.
Yeah.
They have not just insurance for the photographer of up to $2 million insurance capability for it. They also have equipment insurance.
Mhm.
I take pictures and I drop my camera and I break my lens.
Yep.
I'm SOL unless I have insurance. PPA
Somebody
has that
somebody gets
included.
pushy during a street photography session and
Yep.
tries to rip your camera off of you.
I trip on a rock.
Yep.
Something like that. So they've got equipment insurance on there as well as
Mhm,
liability. And then they have a law system already built into there. So all the forms I just listed, I got from PPA.
mhm,
And they have all of them pre written by a lawyer for your area.
mhm,
There are a few states that there are limitations on. Um, some of these can include like California, Kansas does have some
mhm.
limitations on some of the forms.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of watch to make sure that your state is still covered.
Yeah.
But PPA is for American photographers to be able to be a part of
Yeah.
this.
Now, here's a follow-up question for you. For as an event photographer, you might get asked for, doing like events at, like, say, for example, a school. My kids are in
Mhm.
school, and all of them the school has their own release forms on, whether or not you as a parent allow their stuff to get posted online for their Facebook
Yep.
pages and stuff like that, and their events. How does an event photographer navigate something like that?
Well, it's a really good point to bring up as a school. I'm actually one of the photographers at my son's school,
Which is also
and
my kid's school as well.
yep,
Yep.
which has actually brought up that point. We have its written agreement with the school that says we're allowed to be there as a professional capacity to take pictures of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes to their releases for it.
Mm-hmm.
But in that, we cannot release any of the photos.
You're giving it to them to release.
Yes, except to the school itself. We can't post any of those photos on Facebook ourselves. We can't do that because we don't know which kid's which and which parent has given the authority.
Yep.
So we have to sign saying that we promise not to release any of those photos. And when we do that, like for me, I have online gallery access just because of my moral compass and understanding people like yours of your lifestyle. If you don't want those pictures out there, I don't even allow my pictures to be on the gallery access for them to be able to get digitally. I bring them a physical USB copy when we're done, and the rest of it stays on my internal drives. Nothing ever gets put onto a web-based server because it could still get leaked.
Yeah.
But that's, again, I go the extreme when I go through things.
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff that we have to go through for other events would be signage. So if I'm going to, we'll bring up a perfect example. We have, I just jumped off my brain there. Wild West Fest that comes up here every July. I get to take my drone and I fly the parade on there. I actually have to put signs up before everyone makes it over to the parade route, letting them know there will be a drone flying in the parade. It flies directly above my vehicle because I'm in the parade.
Yeah.
But we're filming the crowd, and because of that, we have to make that known. And the way it's set up is by going past those signs, you're aware, and therefore you've given your acknowledgement to my business that you know that you're going to be filmed.
Yeah.
And I have seen some people that when they do that, they see us coming up and they'll kind of like tuck behind other people, or they'll have their kids kind of come by them a little bit more, just so that you can kind of get an idea. And as a visual observer, I see that. I tend to take the camera and move away from where they are just to kind of respect their privacy even more.
Yeah.
But as a public, you can be able to take pictures and videos at any point in a public setting.
Okay. Very good.
But check my notes here real quick. There was one more thing on here. Or not. I guess for the part, at any time, anyone can sue you. It's just going to be an inevitability. Someone's going to go somewhere and say, I want to sue you for it. As long as you've done your due diligence beforehand, the likelihood of them winning the lawsuit becomes significantly reduced.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 15 years. I have not had one lawsuit yet, but at the same time, it could happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I do all this to make sure that if it does happen, I have all my ducks in a row to begin with. But it's a scary thing. You gotta go with it, though. I believe the next one, we're gonna go to our next segment here shortly. And I think you're gonna talk to us about what you can do as a photographer more on your rights as a photographer, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to learning from that. As a street photographer, you've got to know your rights out there. As an event photographer, we have different rights to work with.
Exactly.
So, but with that, we'll go back to another break here, and we'll come back with knowing our rights.
To quote the only band that matters, that would be The Clash, know your rights, all three of them. Welcome back to the Bokeh and Mocha podcast. We're going to be talking, this episode we've been talking about knowing your rights as a photographer, knowing your client's rights, knowing the rights of an event and private property and things like that. But to basically sum it up, and especially from a street photographer standpoint, your rights are pretty much, if they're in public, they're they're fair game kind of thing. We're again, it just goes into like kind of like a moral compass kind of thing. There is a very famous street photographer that I can't remember his name off the top of my head. That's how bad of a street photographer I apparently am, but I'm blanking on his name right now. But he would walk the streets of New York and just he would have a flash, a handheld flash, like connected to his camera, and he would just like get right up into somebody's face, click, and then just keep walking, kind of thing. And it was very avant-garde. It was very in your face kind of thing, but also it was also one of the like kind of pioneers of street photography in a way. And a lot of people are torn on whether or not it's, you know, kosher or not. To me, that feels a little bit too aggressive. There are two the philosophies for street photography. There's either fishing or there's hunting. Fishing is where you camp out a place, you like the light and the look of like this area, and you're just waiting for an interesting subject to walk through the shot, and you just kind of capture them. Versus hunting, where you are scoping out for an interesting person to maybe kind of follow a little bit, and it feels a little creepy in my opinion, but follow them to see where they go and what they're up to kind of thing. And I think there probably is like a time limit on how far you can follow them before it's considered stalking. So it's just something that I just avoid entirely. I always subscribe to the fishing standpoint over the hunting standpoint. Now, for me, if I want to maybe kind of bruise the scene a little bit, that's the term that is used in street photography, where you now interact with the scene and you go up to somebody and just say, "Hey, I like your hat. It's a very cool hat. It's really eye catching. Would you be okay if I took a picture of you just being in your natural environment um, and just you know?" And usually, most of the time, they're pretty cool with it for the
Mhm.
most part. Just having like a little bit of a personality or personal skills will make that smooth over a lot more as well too.
And
I Huh?
your appearance
Yeah.
too. If you're coming up and you have the appearance of I am a photographer, a professional photographer, and you
Mhm.
upkeep yourself with
Yep.
that, you tend to get more people to be
Yeah.
at ease on that. Versus if you come up and the aggressive
Mhm.
way of just like, I'm taking your picture,
Mhm.
that could be seen as a little bit more off putting.
Yeah, exactly. Or if maybe you're feeling like you're acting a little creepy, then it's going to come off a little creepy too.
That too.
If you're like in a ghillie suit in the bush or something like that, it's probably not going to work.
Best
For,
thing is just don't move. They
yep,
don't know you're there.
exactly.
I am
Um,
not speaking from experience on that one.
Yep. But yeah, basically, especially as a street photographer, knowing your rights is incredibly important. And for the most part, as long as they are in public, it's fair game on a legal sense. But again, like I would let your moral compass be your guide on that. There's a lot of aggressive street photographers. When I was in Vegas, there were street photographers there, and I'm using air quotes on that one. What they were doing is they would kind of pop out, take a picture of you, and then try to sell it to you
Right there in the street.
right there in the street, kind of thing.
And
That's
hmm,
that's not kosher.
see, I've never really done a lot with street photography
Mhm.
just because that's not my style.
Mhm.
My style is very nature
Yeah.
and not as many people.
Mhm.
But if I were to do that, my whole thing would be I'd at least want to get in touch with the model, at least give them my business card and
Yeah.
say, hey, come check out my website so you can look at the picture
Mhm.
and let me know what you think, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
That's how I got a few of my models. My models and a few of my follows is that I would photograph dogs.
Mm.
Dogs are a
Hmm.
great way because you're not putting a person inside of it there. You go out to Frontier Park, and if somebody's there playing fetch with their dog, offer to capture some action shots of them chasing the ball and whatnot. And it helps with practice and whatnot. And you also don't need to really necessarily sign a release form for a dog per se, but
Although it would be really kind of cool to have a release form with a dog's
paw
paw
print.
print on the release form. I
Yeah.
kind of would. I'd frame that if I
Yeah,
could.
but then I would talk to the owner and just be like, "Yeah, if you wanna check them out and see and see it, you know, you can check out my Instagram and I'll post them there later on this evening or this weekend if I have time or something like that." Kind of thing.
Now, one of the other questions I have for you too
Mhm.
is we talk about Instagram, Facebook, all that.
Mhm.
As a photographer, how do I protect my rights as a photographer of posting those pictures on social media?
Well, long and the short of it is that if it's street photography related, you can get away with it as long as you're following the rules of that we discussed in the first segment, not going onto private property, not making it where it's like obvious, like what's the word I'm looking for?
Stalkery.
Not just stalkery, but uh, uh, I am blanking on this word here. Extortion, not extortion. You're using somebody, kind of
Uh-huh.
thing. So, like I said, for me, like I like to, if I capture a face, I want it to be like not in a moment of tragedy or traumatic or anything like that. Like if it's just somebody, like sometimes a guy standing on a street corner smoking a cigarette looks pretty freaking cool, and you want to capture that moment. So that's the other thing to keep in mind is, but I can legally post that as long as they were in a public setting and just having their smoke break, and I'm not like being kind of creepy about it. And usually, if I'm going to post somebody's face, I'm usually approaching that person
Okay.
to let them know, like, hey, I kind of like the way you look, and we turn it into a street portrait session than a street photography session.
Kind of starts as photography and goes into portrait.
Exactly.
Pretty cool.
Exactly.
One of the other things too
Mhm.
with social media, if you're worried about your pictures, like
Mhm.
you losing rights to your pictures,
Mhm.
watermark them.
Mhm.
But don't watermark them to the point where it is in your face.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they're worried about, well, if I just put my watermark off in the corner,
Mhm.
that I'll lose it because someone will crop it in. 99% of the pictures that are taken off of Facebook and
Mhm.
everything, they just copy the picture directly over.
Mhm.
They don't even look to see if there's a watermark on
Yep.
it. There's a photographer who's local here. His name is Chris Schmidt.
Yeah.
I love his photos.
Mhm.
Beautiful photography. Hopefully, we can get him on the show one
That'd be
day because
awesome.
he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
He actually puts his watermark on some portion of changes every time and
Mhm.
everything. And I can't tell you how many times that he flagged his own pictures because people steal the picture, post it with his watermark just blatantly right there.
Mhm.
And it's not a big obtrusive watermark. It's only
Yeah.
about a quarter of an inch watermark on those pictures,
Mhm.
but it's phenomenal to see how many people will take that.
Yeah.
And he's just so great. He's like, if you want to take a photo of it, I'd be more than happy to teach you how,
Mhm.
but don't steal my photos.
Yep.
And there's other people, they put the big watermarks all across the image.
Mhm.
Now your image is kind of ruined.
Yeah. Now, to touch on that, now what about sharing the post? It still goes back to you, but
Sharing a post is different
yeah,
because it's still attached to me.
yep.
But these people will literally copy the image,
Just right click, save image as, and then
and then
repost it.
put it as their. Look at this picture I took.
Mhm.
You're
Chris
not
Schmidt.
Chris Schmidt.
You're not photos from Griff. You're
Yup.
not Christopher's Creations
Yup.
LLC.
For me, one of the things I do, and people see this all the time, and people see me on the street and say, "Oh, I've seen your pictures." They can tell they're mine because I actually have a signature
Mhm.
on my. I don't just do copyright; it's a full signature on my images,
Mhm.
and then that way, when they go through, if they share it, great. But it's my signature that's always on that
Yeah.
image.
Well, we might talk about this a little bit more in depth on another episode, especially with
Absolutely.
the area of AI. But I
Oh
did do
yes.
an experiment of uploading my pictures into Chat GPT just to like, there weren't ones that I really cared about, but we
Mhm.
can talk a little bit more
Oh
about that at a
yes.
later episode too, because I found some fascinating stuff on that one.
I think that's a great way to end this episode to get people to listen more. And
Yeah,
sadly, I don't think our next episode will be that, but we will have that one in the future.
yeah.
I think we're going to have to go ahead and close out today's episode. I believe the next episode, you've got a surprise for
I
us,
do, in
right?
fact. Yeah, we're going to be doing some portrait photography and getting into kind of some basics of lighting and posing your model and stuff like that.
Which I think is great. And I think we're going to have a different point of view for this one, which will be our first time running with this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Providing that the tech works, that's the big thing.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, we want to say to everybody, thank you so much for joining with us, and keep shooting and keep sharing. Perfect.
Excellent.